Alan Lewis Raw Conversation, where every voice has a story.
And welcome to episode 22 of the Alan Lewis Raw Conversation. Today we have the personal trainer that everyone knows in Australia, Michelle Bridges, well known from The Biggest Loser, and now she has written 18 books and her new program, Future Proof. Michelle Bridges, thank you for joining us today. Well, welcome to the podcast. Today I have someone coming on who has been in an industry I've been in for over 35 years and have enjoyed this industry so much. This person has been the face of, I believe, of the fitness and the health industry in Australia for so long now on TV and writing, I believe, 18 books, and has helped so many people and has just created a new program called Future Proof. Michelle Bridges, thanks for joining us.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Alan. Thanks for having me on. I'm really grateful to be able to sit down and have a conversation with you about all the things that I'm pretty passionate about.
Yes, I'm been in personal training for, well, I recently just, I suppose you can say, retired from it to what I'm doing now. But your first experience in personal training, where did it start?
I was a child. I was going to school. I moved around schools a few times, and then my last school, it was Nelson Bay High, just outside of Newcastle. And I was around 13 when I started there, and sport was everything to me. Like, that had been my rock for my whole life. And so when I started at Nelson Bay High, and I was, finding my way into all the different sports that were available to me, there were kids that were not participating in sport on a Wednesday afternoon. They would instead stay back at school and, pretend to do their homework while teachers pretended to watch over them, kind of thing. They just muck around, do nothing. And so I went to my school mistress and I pitched an idea that I could teach fitness classes. Never done that before, but I just thought it'd be fun, give it a go. And so she let me do it. And so I immediately went into the mode of, I'm going to need my mixed deck cassette tape. Remember cassettes?
Yeah, cause yeah.
So I'd make my mixed tapes, and then I knew I needed leg warmers and the whole 9 yards. And I started teaching fitness classes to them. And, it was, it'd start with maybe 2 or 3, and then it built, and then it built, and then it built. And I thought, this is great. I'm so good at this. So I went down to the local squash center in Nelson Bay, and I spoke to the owner who sat behind the counter, and I told him that I was in Year 9 at Nelson Bay High, and I teach fitness classes, and I could teach fitness classes at this place here, and I could fill up the downstairs room that's always empty. So he let me loose as a 14-year-old to teach fitness classes. I've never looked back.
No. And I suppose in that going back to those days, it was more like fitness classes. The girls weren't actually in the gym. It wasn't talked about now how important it is for girls to strength train and train their bones and muscles. In them days, what you're talking about, it's more aerobics and cycle classes.
This was 1984, babe.
Yeah.
We were wearing the leotard G-string on the outside of the tights with leg warmers. Like, come on. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
Definitely not weights. I mean, if there were, it would be body weight stuff.
Yeah.
And it was all jumping up and down and, doing a bit of circuit training, really, because I didn't really know how to teach aerobics, but I hadn't even learnt that skill yet. But I was kind of putting them through a bit of a mishmash of what I'd learned in my sport. So the training component of my sport, would it be liners or whether it be push-ups and burpees, and I just would make a circuit like that. But certainly it was weight training for women back then wasn't really a thing. I mean, there were women training with weights, but it was very few and far between. You go into a gym in those days, it would be filled with just men.
Yeah. And after you started doing that, how long did it take you? Did you do a course? Did you find a course in them days in a TAFE?
I was so rogue. I mean, obviously, the laws were a bit looser.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think my one in the early 90s was like a a weekend course or something, and you were a personal trainer.
It really wasn't until I was 18. So
Yeah.
I'd been let loose on the general public for 4 years before I
Yeah.
actually got trained officially.
Mm.
And that was great. I did that in Newcastle, that course.
Mm.
And I think it was more than a weekend, but it was enough to get me across the line, so to speak, at 18. And then I was working a normal job when I'd left school. I was just working in a bank at one point, but I'd met this girl who was working as a fitness instructor full time. And I thought that was incredible. Like, can you really do this full time? So I started teaching fitness classes at West Leagues Club in New Lambton, which is where I was working in the Greater Newcastle Building Society.
Yeah.
I was teaching them at night. And then I moved, I was doing that for quite a bit of time. And then I moved to Alice Springs with a boyfriend at the time, believe it or not. And I just thought, whim, that'd be kind of, a really big adventure. I'd been overseas already and had done a lot of traveling at a very young age. Like, I think I went to Europe when I was 20. So I don't even know how I managed to do that. And then I moved to Alice Springs and I thought, I'm going to flip the switch here. And when I get to Alice Springs, I'm going to just go full-time fitness. So I went to the YMCA at Alice Springs and I was working, I did a lot of different things. I was working in the gym. I was teaching fitness classes. I was teaching circuit classes. I was even doing the holiday program for the kids. But I just put all my eggs into, fitness and health through the YMCA. And that was really how I then discovered a company called Les Mills, which completely changed my life. I found a class, or I went to a fitness convention, and this was now the early 90s on the Gold Coast. And I found this rogue, brand new startup class called Body Pump. They weren't even officially in the convention. They were doing the classes in the lunchtime breaks. So they weren't even part of the official conference. Yeah. And I did this Body Pump class, something that I'd never even heard of or done before. And my mind was blown because I was also in the background doing figure, which is like a form of bodybuilding, but a couple of notches down. And I'd been doing that for a couple of years and doing that very successfully in the gym, with like weights, obviously. And when I saw this Body Pump class, I just went, oh my God, this is it. This is everything, because we were losing people off the aerobics, as it was called then, floor, because the choreography was getting way too complicated, because the front row were always pushing the instructors to do more complexity. And so we were losing people off the aerobics floor. And I was very heavily involved in the gym now, because I'm doing all these figure competitions around the country and even overseas. And so I thought, my God, this is a class that could bring people back to the aerobics floor, because it's actually weights, but with a twist, right? So that sent me on a completely new trajectory. I brought Body Pump back to Alice Springs. Alice Springs was one of the first gyms to have, or YMCA in Alice Springs, was one of the very first gyms to have Les Mills Body Pump in the country.
Okay.
And from that, I was like, oh my God, I love this class. I love the philosophy. I get it. So that was when I decided to move to Sydney and really aim to become a trainer for Les Mills, which I did. And that just completely changed the trajectory of my life from that point forward.
And excuse me, when you were saying about you chased your teacher and tried to, get her to allow you to do the fitness program, was that a bit like I heard with Carrie Ann Kennelly? You started talking to her and trying to get on the segment. You got that drive when you want something, you make sure you go after it. You don't step back, and you're making sure people are hearing of what you're trying to create.
I guess that's a part of my personality. Some would find it very inspiring, and others would just find it absolutely annoying.
Well, it hasn't hurt you to where you are now and what you've done with your life, has it?
Be a little bit tenacious when I want to be, when I really want to get something done. And, I kind of, that's just me, I've always been like that. You're right. Yeah. When I moved to Sydney and really sort of went for it as a Les Mills trainer, I was also then teaching, all over the city, all over Sydney. And, I know what I'm good at, and I'm good at teaching group fitness. Like that was my skill. I was really good at it and I loved it. I guess that was part of the passion, but that was probably why I was as good as I was at it, because I just fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And Kerry Ann Kennelly was coming to my classes. I was teaching at what was then called the Hyde Park Club, which was owned by Kerry Packer in Castlereagh Street in the city. And she would come to my body pump classes religiously, and she had mornings with Kerry Ann. And so I just kept hounding her after class, before class, to get me on her show as a segment. I had this idea of a segment, fitness segment. And eventually she was like, "Oh my God, leave me alone, girl." And so she said, "All right." She gave me her producer's contacts. And then I started harassing them, well, very gently, but I didn't give up.
Yeah.
And so finally they said, "All right, come in, for God's sakes. We're never going to get rid of this girl." I actually found that out because I saw one of the email trails of one of the producers down. I scrolled. And she's like, "Get this girl off my back. She's doing my head in." So I went in and I gave them all my suggestions. I put the concept forward. I pitched the idea. And then they said, "All right, we'll do it, but we're not going to pay you." And I'm like, "That's fine.
Yeah.
Let's get 5 in the can, put them out onto the show. If the audience like it, then we can talk turkey financially." And that's what we did. So it went, they loved it. They even back paid me. Can you believe it? And it went from there. So then I sort of, I guess, my profile had then started to stretch from just being really in the fitness industry to now being a little bit more out there to the general public through Mornings with Kerry Ann.
How was it going on TV? Were you, a bit scared about what people were going to think, how you were feeling, the confidence, or did you just have that much confidence you were ready for it?
Well, see, this is where I have to say that Les Mills changed my life, because through them, I became an excellent presenter. Through them, I learned the skills of being able to get in front of group and not only teach a class, but also then go through the technicalities of, the movements and why we do this and the way in which we do it. And I was working with their physiotherapists as to the reasons why we devised a lot of the particular movement that we were doing. And then I was having to break that down, the technicality of that, break it down, and then deliver that content to the trainers in a way that it was easily digested. So that was a skill that I just had to learn in that position. So when I jumped in front of the camera to do a 2 minutes, vignette, Kerry Ann would call them, on how to do a squat or how to do a lunge, it came very naturally to me. So I automatically had that skill set. What threw me, though, was when she rang me in the early days and said, "So can you cook?" I mean, she throws a question at me like that. Of course, I'm going to go, "Yeah, sure, of course I can." She goes, "You want to come in and do a live cooking demonstration?" I'm like, "Sure, no problem." She said, "All right, tomorrow." And I'm like, "Yep, cool." Hung up and went, "Oh my God, I've got to cook live on TV." Like, what? That threw me. So, I think I managed to cook about 67 pieces of salmon at home that night to get the action to go in the next day and cook like a nice meal. That threw me. And she was such a pro. I watched her on camera in a live situation, and I really learned a lot from her.
Yeah, it's interesting you said yes, because sadly I spoke to Jamie Dunn, Agro, just before he died, and I was talking to him. He said, in this world, when you're in television, radio, say yes to everything. If you can't if you can't do it, when you get off the phone, go running through the house and try to work it out, because as soon as you say no, they're on to the next person.
Of course.
So it's interesting you said no, and that night went and tried so many recipes, and the next day you're doing it, and no one knew the difference, and your confidence grows from there. The confidence of the team for Kerry Ann trust you, and then you can carry on from there as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You just say yes and figure it out. It's just like small business, or working in the media world. I feel like sometimes it's it's aligned with jumping out of a aeroplane and assembling the parachute on the way down. You know, like that's just, you've just got to be able to fly on your feet, work fast on your feet. And if you can't, so be it. But if you can, great.
That's what I've kind of done with this podcast. You know, I'm going to ask everyone out there to come on, you know, famous, unknown, a bit of people who are, you know, people I find interesting. I don't care if I send out 120 come back. Yes, that's positive. Work with them and no, you ask, and the answer no doesn't never hurt, you know, and it only helps, you know, build your confidence to know how to work it and build yourself up for the next person.
Yeah. Yeah. You just got to get in there and go for it. Like, don't hold yourself back by overthinking it, you know, having paralysis, what I like to call paralysis by analysis, you know, just thinking about it, just turn your head off and just go, just get it done. It's like the same with training. You know, I tell the same thing to people with training. It's the same concept. You know, you paralyze yourself by overthinking it. Just freaking put your runners on and get out the door and go for a walk. Done.
Yeah. And I suppose, like we were talking about how, like, in them early years, females were mostly doing, you know, aerobics and that. And for a female personal trainer in them days, you know, you always thought of the, you know, 6 foot, you know, 100 kilo personal trainer in the gym. Again, you know, female personal trainers were not as big in them days. And for you to get that early role must have gave other girls who were growing up and who were in the industry, you know, a chance to think it's possible to do that as well.
I suppose so. Yeah. I mean, certainly back in the 80s, there were no female personal trainers, or very, you know, very few.
Yeah.
And then that's really started to change in the 90s as the industry really took off. You know, the industry really blew up in the 90s. It did, as far as, you know, me sitting there in the middle of it, it just felt like it really went nuts, and everybody was talking about health and wellness. And then, you know, you look at the industry today, it's huge, but I really felt like that I saw the really big kickoff in the early 90s, and I'd sort of already started in the 80s. So I kind of felt like I was riding the wave, maybe without even realizing it.
And I want to get down to your future program as well. But just with moving on, then you got into Biggest Loser. How did that come along? And that must have been just suddenly, you know, being in the media a little bit, then, you know, in front of TV, in front of Australia and everyone knowing you. How did that change?
Yeah, without sounding woo-woo, I kind of feel like I may have manifested that, because I remember sitting watching this new show on TV, which was American, The Biggest Loser, thinking, oh my God, okay, this is like my industry. So I watched it and I was like gobsmacked. I thought, oh my God, I would love to do that job. It looks like so much fun. If it ever came to Australia, I've got that job. That's my job. I'm having that job. Yeah. And I said it out loud to the person that I was sitting next to. I said, I'm going to get that job if this show comes to Australia. And they were like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. And so then it did. And I got a casting call because I had a very strong name in the fitness industry. And I put my feelers out as well. Like, I wasn't silly. Like, I could see that if it were to come to Australia, there would be a certain few production companies that would take it on, because I looked at the production company that was being used in America. So I didn't just, you know, sit there and cross my fingers. I actually went and did some research and investigated. And so I emailed some production companies in Australia and just basically said that, you know, I gave them who I was and my details and, you know, everything that I'd sort of done so far in the fitness industry, and that I would love a chance to speak to someone if this show ever comes to Australia. And I just put them out there, just, you know. And then I got a casting call from a casting agency to come in. And I was like, what? Is this real? Is this really coming to Australia? And so I went to the audition like everybody else that they might have reached out to. There weren't that many that they had, from my understanding. but it did take 6 months of auditions,
Yeah.
of testing me with different other trainers, of them testing me in front of audiences, fitness testing. Then it got to psychological testing, but it took about 6 months, and I was, by this stage, I just give me the job already. It's mine.
Yeah, it's yours.
And then finally I got it, and I was beside myself because I just knew that this was going to be another one of those moments in my life that was just going to take my life in a different direction again.
Yeah. With when you went into it, I mean, you knew a little bit about the media with being on the morning show, but when it blew up and got bigger and bigger every year, then you're in front of the media all the time. Then you're thinking you probably need managers. Was it a big learning experience from, just suddenly having the media watching you, everything you doing and talking about, everyone's talking, going on radio shows. It must have just been a crazy time because it just blew up so fast to learn so much in that time.
Yeah, 100%, and times 20.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a massive, steep learning curve, and I was green. I thought I was, and I was polished as far as presenting and my work, the
Yeah.
content that I work in, the world that I work in. But when it came to dealing with everything that you just said, I was green, and it was a massive learning curve. I had some great support around me, but I had to be on my A game and soaking up as much as I possibly could, like a sponge, and making a lot of mistakes along the way as well. But then having to figure it out, and having to figure it out fast, because as you've said
It
earlier,
grew so fast.
it's a tough world out there.
Yeah.
They don't hold back. And a lot of the media questions would be controversial, or they'd feel like the show was controversial, or they would try to trip you up in interviews, and so you had to really kind of be on your A game.
Yeah. And like how you are, you're so out there and ready to talk to anyone. And then I suppose you have to watch closely to who your friends are, who's getting close to you around that time as well, because it's so easy for people wanting to be your friend when you're, traveling at that level. And it's amazing, how many people can want to ride on your energy and ride on what's happening to you at that stage, and then drop off so fast when you're needing a friend or backup around that time.
Oh yeah, that comes with the territory for sure. I'm very fortunate that I don't have a huge cast of friends.
Yeah.
I have a very small cast of friends, in fact. But I've had them as mates for more than 30 years.
Yeah.
So those ones, the ones that that I'm thinking of right now, they knew me before the show.
Yeah.
They knew me as a 20-year-old girl. And so that's never changed. Of course, I've met more people along the way, and I do have, other friends, but that really tight network that I have, it's really close to my heart.
Yeah.
Count on one hand. They've known me since I was in my 20s.
That's so important. And thanks. You should take me through that early journey. And like you said, it happened so fast, especially Biggest Loser, and how much, where it was talked about, and, it happened in the United States. Here was just talked about around the world. And, it must have been.
It's because we were one of the few countries that took it on. I think that was America, then we took it, and then it went to the UK, but it didn't last that long in the UK. And in fact, what they were doing was streaming Australia, The Biggest Loser, over in the UK, and they were streaming it in New Zealand and in other countries as well. So we sort of started having a reach that went just beyond the borders of Australia.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was a totally different time to today. At the time, it was, we had no Netflix, no Stan, there was no streaming.
No.
I don't even think, was there Foxtel? There might have been Foxtel, maybe.
Yeah.
But it was a different moment. Like, we were getting 2.5 million people watching 4 nights a week.
Yeah.
Networks would kill for those kinds of numbers now.
Oh, it wouldn't. Sorry, but it's like, I suppose you can think, but around the days, everyone was watching it on them Sunday nights, Monday nights. It was like a bit like Hey Hey. Everyone sat down to watch it.
Yeah,
It
remember
came,
Hey Hey?
yeah, yeah. It came that family show where families were sitting down. Then you would turn on the radio the next day and hear people talking about who was their favorite, what's happening. So, and it was a basically the start of, I suppose, a lot of reality TV, seeing people every day and getting to know each person. I suppose Big Brother was there, but
Yeah, it
big,
was one of the early day reality shows for sure.
exactly. So, one of the biggest things we're here to talk about today is one of your new programs called Future Proof. I know you have wrote, I think, about 18 books, but this is another exciting stage that you are now starting. Can you tell me a bit about Future Proof?
Yeah, it really was a program that was born from an accident, believe it or not. And I love that because it's the truth. And I always think that things that turn up when you're being creative often just when you're really trying to be creative, sometimes you just you draw a blank and then something will happen and you'll go, oh my God, just, yeah, okay, I get this. I get this idea. I get this concept. So I had a skiing accident in Japan last year, just over a year ago. And because I was actually thinking, what's my next project going to be? Like, am I going to do another project even? For my 12 WBT program. And then, yeah, I had a skiing accident and it absolutely floored me. Like it was a disaster.
Yeah.
I ski, I've skied for years. I had a knee injury, ACL medial, big accident about 10 years ago on a T-bar. Wasn't even
Okay.
actually skiing. And I had to have surgery for that. And
Yeah.
it was tough to get back, but I did, thanks to my level of fitness at the time.
Yeah.
So every time I'd ski from then forward, and it took me a while to get my confidence back, I would always have my knee strapped beyond, yeah, I'd have like 3 straps on it. It was ridiculous. But I could then ski. So then I went to Japan and opened up my suitcases and I'd forgotten all my straps, all my knee straps.
Okay.
I was like, oh no. And I'm in a rural village, so I couldn't even go and buy any. And I thought, no, I've got the strength, I can do it, which was mistake number 1.
Yeah.
And then, lo and behold, I did my knee and then found myself in a wheelchair and then found, as well as crutches. And because I was in rural Japan and there was nothing that I could take for blood thinning before my plane flight, which is what you should do when you have a trauma
Yeah.
to an injury, I then came off that plane, thank God, because I slept a lot of the way and didn't really move enough. And in a wheelchair, I came off, and then I'm at home and I'm on crutches and I can't cook for my 9-year-old and I can't do anything. I can't even drive. And I went straight to my knee surgeon and he's like, okay, we'll do this, and we'll check this out, and we'll MRI this. And he goes, I'm just going to do an ultrasound on your calf muscle. And I'm like, why? He goes, you could have a DVT. And I'm like, what? Sure enough, I had 2 DVTs in my calf muscle as well.
Mm.
So I slept on a plane, didn't move with DVT.
Yeah, that's dangerous. Yeah.
So dangerous. So now I'm not only unable to drive, unable to cook, unable to do anything for my 9-year-old son. I can't even shower without sitting in a plastic chair. I was completely incapacitated.
Yeah.
And I was a burden that's how I felt.
Yeah, of course.
So that was when, once I got over that, which took a while, I thought, I know exactly what it feels like to be in that position. And my God, like it's frightening to think that that could be my future if I don't continue to look after myself the way that I always have. Nobody's got a crystal ball, accidents happen, but that was something that really like took the wind out of my sails. So I thought, all right, let's look at a concept around how do we future-proof ourselves? How do we do something that's going to look after us and cover the full gamut, not just our strength and our muscles and our bones through strength training, but what about other things like mobility and being able to get our bodies in a mobile position and in movement that allows us to then use that strength in a correct way, in a way that's not going to injure ourselves, or that we're going to do a little bit of exercise that stops us from injuring ourselves, or some rehab that gets ourselves moving better, so that we can get rid of maybe some injuries that we've had. And because I always liken it to, if you go to your physiotherapist and they give you a bunch of rehabilitation exercises, 99.9% of people don't do them. It's like, oh, whatever, I'll just figure it out. So what I did was I inbuilt into the program prehab and rehab exercises, so that you don't have to think of them as an afterthought. They're actually inside the program. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to go one step further. I also wanted to look at brain and brain cognitive, neuroplasticity, which I didn't know. I knew a bit about, but then I wanted to dive into that world, because everybody, as a real topic of conversation is Alzheimer's and dementia. What can I do that I can inject into this program that will get brain activity functioning as well? And in all the research that I did, believe it or not, learning dance, learning choreography knocks Sudoku, crosswords, puzzles out of the park.
Yeah.
So I thought, right, I'm going to put in a dance, choreography dance into this program as well. And so I went and got like the best of the best, that being Kelly Abbey, and she is the choreographer for the dancers within the program. So now it's getting exciting, because now we're not just looking at weight training. We're also looking at how we can, protect ourselves from injury or rehabilitate injury. And we're also looking at how we can use our bodies and our brains and get that cognitive response as well. So that's kind of the basis of it. For me, I find it very exciting.
It is, and like you said, it's a program, any age as you get older as well, you can do. And what's so important as people get older, bone density, as you know, for whatever gender you are, is the most important thing, is getting them bones, even just jumping on the spot, getting them, the bones is one of the most important things. And people don't understand. And as I have heard you talk before, and I have said before, you don't have to do an hour program. It can be 20, 15 minutes. You just have to do it every second day, and it'll improve your health. You'll get stronger, and it helps muscle growth and everything. And some people don't understand, more muscle growth you have, you burn calories.
Correct. That's exactly right. The more muscle you've got on your body, you're basically turning yourself from a 2-stroke engine into a V8 when it comes to calorie consumption. But I think also what, everybody, well, not everybody, but general, most people understand that being strong muscularly is great for not only what we just said, but also for your bones. But what's also equally important, and maybe not as thought of, is your balance and your I was going to say coordination, but probably more balance even.
Yeah.
Balance, agility. That's what I was going to say. Being able to be somewhat agile, because from the research that I've done from the last few programs that I've created, falling over and breaking a hip it's like a downward spiral for a lot of people. Like a hip fracture, 70% of people who take a hip fracture will die within the first 12 months, which I didn't realize. That's without the surgery. With the surgery, even 30% will die within the first 12 months, even with the surgery. And that's because of all the complications that a hip fracture brings. And normally it happens in that age category where you're maybe in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, and you haven't potentially taken great care of yourself.
Yeah.
Has the, it's like opening a can of worms. Now, when I saw those stats, I was shocked. I actually did not know that when I first put that out, when I was doing the Menopause Method program. I was like, are you kidding me? You can die within 12 months of a hip fracture. And the really exciting news to that, because I know it sounds a little bit depressing, is that most of those hip fractures are avoidable. most of them happen because they're wobbly on their feet. They don't have that kinesthetic awareness, that because they haven't got the musculature to hold themselves strong on the ground. And so they're wobbly, and then they're walking on a surface most of the footpaths around here in Sydney like this. They trip and they can't catch themselves. They don't have the agility to catch themselves.
No.
So when I put the program together, I've also inbuilt agility style exercises that train the body to be able to catch themselves if you unfortunately do take a fall.
Yeah.
To try and eliminate the potential of a break.
Oh, of course. And I think sometimes even doesn't matter what age you are, some people are, it's amazing how many people can fall over and not actually get up. It's amazing. And what I used to say, I used to do a radio little segment going back in the early 2000s, just like a 5-minute thing. But one thing I used to say even to some elderly people was, even if, you can get off the chair and do a dip off the chair, sit back down, and then walk to the door a couple of times a day. If there's a fire or something happening, you got that strength. It's not something, big, you have to go to the gym, but it's so amazing how many people who have been elderly, who have been caught in a fire, who just can't get out of that chair or walk to that door. And if you can have just that little fitness and that strength, can save your life.
Yes, correct. So you're very correct. And in my research, they say that if you can just keep your legs strong, if nothing else, just keep your legs strong, you've got a better chance of a better quality of life and longer life. So I've made sure that we hit the legs twice inside the 5 days of training. Again, like you say, it doesn't have to be an hour. The workouts are only half an hour. And they're 5 days a week. They're not 7 or 6 days a week. They're only 5. They're only half an hour. And so we have 2 leg days, along with many other things. But there's the mobility, prehab, rehab day. And then there's the dancing day. And again, it's all grounded in science and research around what's the best things that we can do that aren't going to take up too much time either, because I know everybody's busy. But just those little things those small things just in the exercise world, and we haven't even touched on the nutrition factor that it's also inside the program.
I was just going to say that.
There's levers. There's so many levers there for you to pull on to really make an incredible difference into the next chapters of your life. I liken it, the best analogy I can think of is, imagine a ship on course, and you change the ship's direction by just a degree. Over a course of time, that ship will land in a completely different country, by that degree of change. So it's like you're living now, today, presently. The small 1 degree that you make in your lifestyle around your nutrition and around your movement can, in the course of time, have you go down a completely different path as far as your health and as far as your, strength is concerned, your fitness is concerned. And that can be completely life-changing.
Yeah. And I think something's interesting you said there, what I've been thinking of too, as me being a personal trainer and yourself, it's amazing that when someone does come in and they do love that fitness and they're a client, you can change a generation for them too. So if their family before that hasn't been a healthy family or believed in fitness and that, and you can change that person, male, female, whatever gender they are, and they grasp that and then enjoy diet and health and fitness, that moves on to the next generation. So like you say, changing a course, you can change a course of a generation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course you can. It's interesting when you start sort of looking at the way, nature versus nurture kind of situation. And, my son, strangely enough, he's not as active. He's not as, I won't say active. He's not as into sport as I was as a child, which is, I just stay quiet because he's got to figure out what it is that he likes. But he understands and he witnesses me training, and now he sometimes will join in with me. He's only 10, so I think that what he's watching is he will start to mirror. And even now, like, he's starting to get an interest in soccer, which is great. So the other day he wanted to go down the park on Sunday and kick the ball. And I was like, I didn't ask, I didn't push, but he's starting to understand that if you put the work in, you get better.
Yeah.
And when it comes to nutrition, well, he's just so used to it now. His palate is quite extraordinary. He eats more varieties of food than most adults, which is great. And it's all he's ever known. It's not like I'm trying to, push it. No, because it's all he's ever eaten since he was a baby.
Yeah.
So that I'm very proud of. I can take him out to a restaurant and he will eat straight off the menu, no problem. Like, he eats anchovies out of a jar and he loves olives and all the strong flavors he's into.
Yeah. No, that's how our kids.
Because it's what he's known.
Exactly. Well, that's how our kids are. My wife has been very healthy with her foods as well. My boys would rather go to the fridge and, eat a couple of carrots and a celery than go to the chips or eat the chips. And it's amazing. And they've done that, since they've been children, and still now when they visit us, because they're fully grown up, they'll look for a carrot or a celery stick. And, it's amazing how it just flows on and, grows through each generation for them.
Yeah, look, I mean, I remember when I was 18 and moved out of home, because my mum was the same. And as soon as I moved out of home, I went down the grocery aisle with my shopping trolley, thinking I was all that. Now moved out by myself, I'm a fully fledged adult at 18. And I bought everything that I wasn't allowed to have. I bought the Cocoa Pops. I got the white fluffy bread. I got all of it, the biscuits and everything. And I lasted like a week and I felt absolutely disgusting. Then I went back to the way I was, used to
eating. Yeah.
So it was kind of a great lesson learned. So within Future Proof, I've really got together with my dietitian, also my 12-week body transformation dietitian, who's been with me for over a decade now. So she knows the program intimately. And, I sat with her and I said, this is, the direction of Future Proof. So we really put the screws down on fiber, because protein has had its day in the sun and it's still there shining away, and rightfully so, because it's incredibly essential. But something that hasn't probably had its time in the sun is fiber. And we're coining the term, or that's being coined, fiber maxing. But it's basically just making sure that you're getting, as many different varieties of fiber as you possibly can in your diet, for all the incredible, reasons and research that backs that up as well. So she's heavily involved in the meal planning and the meal prepping. I've had the likes of Dr. Norman Swan. I've sat down and interviewed him. He's incredible. If you get a chance to put him on your show, do it, because he's very busy. It's hard to sit down with him. But he was extraordinarily knowledgeable when it came into healthy aging, preventative health, and heart health. So that was an incredible interview, which is embedded into the program. I have, as I mentioned, Kelly Abbey, who is a guru in the dance world. She is the master choreographer for Dancing with the Stars. She's worked with the likes of Hugh Jackman and Baz Luhrmann. She did the choreography for Happy Feet, the movie.
Okay.
If you say the name Kelly Abbey to someone in the dance world, they literally kneel down and pray. She's incredible. And I didn't actually think I could get her. I just rang her on a whim, thinking that she might be able to give me someone that she knew who could do the dance section for me. And she's like, I want to be a part of it. So I was like astounded. I spoke an interview with Annabelle Mattison, who's an evidence-based doctor on brain health, cognitive resilience, and dementia prevention. So her interview was enlightening for me to move forward with the program, and her interview is also embedded in the program. Dr. Harry Wisniger, He is really a master when it comes to inflammation and inflammation control, which we now know is a big part of aging and can, if you can get that inflammation down, can make huge differences in, the way in which you live your life. Luke Corey, who was my chiropractor at one time, and he has an incredible amount of knowledge when it comes to, strength, mobility, recovery strategies. And then Lisa Donaldson is my nutritionist who I worked with the program. And then the last person that I also worked with inside this program is Kylie Jones. Now, she is the founder of a company called 50 and Fearless. And she really speaks to women, about this next chapter, looking at, and I'm not just 50. I mean, it could be from 45, whatever age, but just like, what's this going to look like for you? How's this going to, you got a bit of a plan? How do you want this to turn out? And a lot of us don't even think about it. What do you want to look like? What do you want your life to look like at 60 or 70? How many people do you hear about that go through their life, they work their butts off, they get their kids raised, they pay off, or they continue to pay a mortgage and do a job and 3 kids and, elderly parents and, they're working. What are we working towards? Well, maybe we're working towards retirement when one day I can like kick back a little bit and then really enjoy everything that I've, worked towards. And then, they get into their 60s and have a heart attack and drop dead.
Yeah. Yeah. And a couple of things on what you just said. One about fiber. I can remember when I was becoming a personal trainer in the early 90s, I remember we gave this book, and it might be, about people's stills when they're going to the toilet. And like you said, fiber, telling how healthy you are by going to the toilet and how important that fiber, the protein, fat, and equaling all that out is. And, in the diet, and now the nutrition diet you put together sounds like, it's got all of them points, what's so important, fiber and protein and fats, and how to put it all together.
Absolutely. It's about getting the balance, about getting the variety.
Yep.
We can be creatures of habit, which I'm a bit of a fan of, because I always say habits, routines, and rituals are what gets shit done. Like you get into your groove, you get up every morning, you tick your boxes, maybe you do your workout first thing in the morning and get that monkey off the back. Habits and routines and rituals are really great ways to, move the needle, so to speak, especially when it comes to health and fitness. But often we can get into routines that set us back. And one of them is just not incorporating a variety of different vegetables and fruits and basic produce in your everyday diet, a lot of beige eating, so to speak. So getting that variety of different color and different, whether it be, the beautiful yellows, capsicums, and all the greens and all the reds and, all the oranges, and having that in your recipe palette, make a huge difference. But it's a lot of people will like, well, where do I start? Well, I've got all the recipes put together. So here's your recipes. Here's your shopping lists that I've even put together. You can even take that shopping list that I've designed for you. How many people in your family? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, great. Here's your recipes. Here's your shopping lists that will calibrate for how many people are in your family. And then you literally just send that online, and you don't have to walk out of your house to get your shopping lists done, getting yourself organized and prepared. But in many instances, there are so many of us out there that actually don't really know how to cook. So it's starting to get people to learn that it's actually not that hard. And in fact, don't believe the BS. It is cheaper. Yes, I know the cost of living has definitely gone up, but if you're eating seasonally, and you're, choosing the way in which you're going to purchase your food, whether it's from the veggie markets or whether it's from the supermarket, and you're eating seasonally, and you're eating all of it. So you're cooking up recipes that you can fridge and freezer, and they're your takeout meals. Then it's going to be cheaper, especially if you do eat a lot of takeout. Takeout is expensive. Eating out is expensive. Oh my God. I bought my son a ham and cheese croissant. He really wanted a ham and cheese croissant. Okay. $12. I was like, are you kidding me? I looked at the guy and went, what?
I
Like
think
for $12, I could have cooked a full meal and fed, you know, 3 to 4 people. I've got
exactly.
recipes in my recipe index. Like we've got in my 12 WBT program,
Yeah.
got around about 1,500 recipes. Like it would take you about 4 years to eat every recipe that we have. That's how many recipes we have. And I've got budget friendly ones as well, where we've got soups that can extend from the meal tonight through to you know, Saturday night when the wheels fall off and you just want to pull out a soup and have a bit of sourdough toast with it.
Yeah.
That they will cost you about $1.50 to $2 a soup.
Yeah.
That's going to be cheaper than Uber Eats all day and all night. Sorry, I can definitely beat that.
Oh, no, it's so great. One other little path I want to go down, but what you're just saying there as well, again, with like you talked about your son who eats anything on any food. And I think if you got young children, you start putting that on the plate now as they're so young, they won't know any difference. They'll just think this is what mom's, serving up, and they'll enjoy it. And again, all it does again is makes that generation of the family healthy and improves their brain health, their health, and, schooling and everything, I believe.
My son has this saying that he got from Paddington.
Yeah.
He goes, "You get what you get, and you don't get upset."
Yeah, it sounds good. Going one of the
Really talk about how we can find out more about the program and get involved.
Yep, I'll do that at the end. But I was going to say, one of the other. Well, actually, before I go down, actually, that's good, Jay. Before I go down one other path, what you're big, you talk about lots is menopause, and something my wife is someone who really listens to what you say and reads a lot. Can you tell us where we can find that program and the best way for people to find it and join the program?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for asking. So I have a program now that's 16 years old. It's called the 12-Week Body Transformation. I
Yep.
built that when I was doing Biggest Loser, actually. And it has about 16 different programs inside of it. And so over the last few years, I've been adding to the playlist, if you like. So there's one called the Menopause Method. There's another one called the Perimenopause Method. And then this latest one is called Future Proof. But I've also got like Fit for 50. I've got Learn to Run. So you can learn to run a half marathon. So there's a lot in the scope of the 16 different opportunities or different programs inside of there. But you just basically go to 12WBT,
Yep.
Google my name even, you'll find it, and then you jump in and you can select the program that you wish to work with. So if you're a perimenopausal woman, I've got the program for you. If you're someone that just wants to do a basic program to get a bit fit, get a bit strong, lose a bit of weight, I've got that program as well. If you're someone that is really looking to change the way in which you're the next, decade, second decade, third decade, so you're in your 40s and you want to sort of change the way you might look in your 50s and 60s and 70s and beyond, then potentially Future Proof is the one for you. So they're 12-week programs, and they're 12 weeks for a reason. Because I know as a PT, and you would know the same, things don't happen in 2 weeks.
No.
Don't happen in 3. I mean, they do, of course. You see a change. Women will write to me and say, "Oh, God, I've only been doing your program for 2 weeks, and already I feel different. I can see it." But 12 weeks gives people a chance to really nail down the habits, routines, and rituals. Inside of 12 weeks are going to be birthdays, they're going to be holidays, they're going to be, tragedies, they're going to be joys, weddings, all sorts of things are going to happen inside 12 weeks, and you're going to have to learn how to figure it out. And they're the lessons. They're the lessons. You start to have to think forward, look at your diary, look what's happening. And so that's that, life happens in 12 weeks. And
Yeah, it does.
that's why I made it that period of time. A lot of people go, "Oh, 12 weeks is a long time." It's not. It flies by.
No.
It gives you a real understanding of the habits that have been holding you back and being able to bed down habits that are going to move you forward.
Thanks for that. And see, I told you why, Jacob. I get so interested in what people are saying. I sometimes forget some of the main questions. So we'll make sure we'll put that links in and that for people to find it. One of the other places, if you don't mind, and hopefully you've been enjoying my questions. One of the areas I want to go down is menopause, and the area you're being a big advocate about that. As I have heard, you had gone through it, and the things with a sore hip, I heard you got from it. What would you say some of the biggest lessons you have learnt yourself from it?
Thank you for asking. It's a great topic. I have so much to say. I could literally talk for an hour or more on this topic, but I won't bore you.
No, but I want you to go, because one thing. But in what I'll say, why I find it so interesting. My wife, she reads a lot and she listens to a lot, and I think it's what's great about my wife. Our children are around 24, 27, but she even speaks about it in front of them, and I think it's really good. I think it's great that men start learning it very early before they're in a relationship. But I think it's really important for men to learn it early on, and husbands to understand it, because it's a very hard time for a couple when they're going through it, especially for the female. But I think the males have to have a full understanding about it too. And I think what you're doing, putting it out there, is helping couples understand it.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I did the first program, which was the menopause method. And then as soon as I did that, I realized, oh my God, this is an iceberg. This is bigger than you realize. It's there's so much more to it. So I quickly followed it up with the perimenopause method, and then I followed it up with the perimenopause method book, and then I followed it up with my podcast called We Have a Situation. Because it is a big topic, and it starts right back to basically birth, really.
Yeah, of course.
There's a lot to learn, but I mean, I think men haven't had the opportunity to be given that information, because women haven't even had that information, to be honest. So how the hell are we supposed to expect our men to understand it when most women still haven't got the full understanding, because we were never taught it. In fact, things are changing. That's only really happened in the last 5 years, though. And I've been studying this now for about 7 years because of me going through it. It was a very authentic project. Once again, how I said about my future-proof program came from my ski accident. My other programs, my book, my podcast, all came from me going through perimenopause. And I didn't even know at that time, all those years ago, I didn't even know there was a word in the English language that was perimenopause, because no one had ever talked to me about it. And here I was presenting to my doctor with symptoms that were like, am I going crazy? Like, there's some weird stuff going on. And I'm very aligned with my physicality and my body. And I just am. I've always been in touch very sensitively with, what's happening here. And I was suddenly very much confused and presenting as a very obvious perimenopausal woman. And not once did that word come up in the conversation, and not once did even the word menopause come up in that conversation. And in fact, what I was given was a script for antidepressants, which is a very common thing. So, and my point to this is, it's not a conversation up until maybe the last 5 years that's ever really been talked about and exposed and given the science and the research behind it until now. And so from that, I've just felt completely confused and was like, well, hang on a minute. I'm a bit flat. I don't know if I'm depressed enough to be taking antidepressants. Not that I've got any judgment around them, because they work beautifully for a lot of women.
Yeah.
But I just felt completely at a loss. And so my point, getting back to my point, is that it's only now that they're going to change the curriculum in university for doctors to actually have training in perimenopause and menopause, because up until now, it hasn't even been in the curriculum, Alan.
Yeah. No.
Like, can you get your head around that? No. So this is why most women out there were predominantly being prescribed antidepressants, or, you know, have you tried more yoga, or, you know,
Yeah.
and thinking that they're going a bit nuts. And of course, really dig into the research. There's a whole science behind HRT and what happened about 25 years ago and how that all got in the media, and that's all.
I believe it gives you cancer or breast cancer.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
all been debunked. That's all been walked back.
Yeah.
But it left, you know, maybe 2 or 3 generations of women that didn't have those opportunities that they have now, which can be a real game changers for many, many women in so many different ways.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. It's fascinating that we're now learning this as females, but then we're also now able to give that information to our blokes. You know, you guys got pretty lucky in the gene pool. You guys get a chance to have your hormones stay like that for your entire life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I just threw a line across the page. Basically, they're steady all the way through your entire life. They change a little bit as you get older, but nothing like the cycles, ups and downs that women have throughout their entire life. And then once they get to perimenopause, then it goes absolutely bonkers.
Crazy. That's why, excuse me, my wife, Karen, she's very open what she talks about. And I think it's very important, like talking to my boys. Sometimes they go, oh my God, you're talking about it again. But, you know, they're only young, but they listen. And, you know, understanding about night sweats. She's had, you know, frozen shoulders. They believe what's part of it. And, you know,
so 70 different types of symptoms. Do you know why, Alan? Why we have these whacked out symptoms? Is because we have estrogen receptors all throughout our body. We have them in our brain, we have them in our muscle, bones, digestion, through our intestines, our skin, everywhere in our entire body has estrogen receptors. And so when our estrogen and progesterone from perimenopause starts going like a chaotic roller coaster, but ultimately what's happening is they're gradually in decline, then now we have symptoms that are turning up because of that lack of estrogen and because of that lack of progesterone. And often this not always, but often the first symptoms are neurological because we have such rich estrogen receptors in our brain. So the neurological symptoms that can often turn up for women are anxiety, depression, the inability to sleep or go to sleep or stay asleep, mood swings, an overwhelming feeling of a sense of doom, forgetfulness, you know, the inability to get your words out properly. And you think, what the hell? I'm in a business meeting and I would normally slay here. And today I can't even get a sentence straight. And you start really questioning yourself and thinking, what's going on? And then the symptoms move from neurological symptoms into then physiological symptoms, like, as you mentioned, frozen shoulder. I had a hip that just was like gnawing at me like a freaking chainsaw. All sorts of digestive issues, you know, skin issues and irritations, burning mouth, if you can believe that. That can be a symptom as well. Tinnitus. I was getting ringing in my ears the sound of the old internet dial-up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? So these symptoms can turn up for women. They can be on a scale of 1 to 10, they can be a 2 or a 3. And then for other ladies, beyond a 10. It's very different for every single woman. But nonetheless, they can be very, they can really throw you off course. And we lose a lot of women out of the workforce because of it. We lose women out of education because of it. And it costs our economy because of it. And it can not be fixed, but we can certainly, again, like I said before, we can pull on about 10 different levers to support it, to even some cases take it away in some cases, but then in other cases at least assist those symptoms. And you know, these conversations have only just turned up in the last 5 years. We're 2026. Why haven't we been talking about this sooner?
And it's amazing you just said that. All them signs you said, if my wife was in here, Karen, she would be going tick, 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 and go, See, I'm not crazy.
I'm
I
not
do, and
crazy.
I never have caught a crazy. But she said, "See,
But
I,
you're thinking, what? Like,
yeah,
I would wake up bathed in sweat. I've never had a hot flash ever, thank
Yeah.
God. But
Yeah.
I would wake up bathed in sweat, and then I'd get the shivers, and then I couldn't go back to sleep. And so the rest of the day was a complete write-off.
yeah,
And you're trying to function. And so some of those things, maybe not the physiological symptoms, but certainly the neurological symptoms, you can start to gaslight yourself because,
exactly.
well, I'm tired. I've got a huge job. I've got 3 kids. I've got a mortgage. I've got elderly parents. Like, I've got a lot of shit going on. So,
Yeah.
you know, you can go to your doctor and say, look, I'm feeling anxious. I've got anxiety, or I'm feeling, this, whatever. And so it can easily be explained away
Yeah.
without, if that conversation of, well, hang on, maybe you could be perimenopausal, which, just by the way, can start as early as 35 for some women.
Yep. And see, everything you're saying, I have heard you speak about before, but my wife does so much much research, and she's talked about these things. What's so great for me to hear and understand. So I think, like I said, in a partnership, if you can understand what's going on,
Yeah.
it makes it so much easier. And even you're saying, you could be getting up and trying to do a work. She's even talked where it's like a head face. She can be on her phone between a client. She's just saying, I'm looking at this, but I don't know. I'm not looking at the phone. I don't understand what's happening around me. And again, you must feel awful because you're thinking, what's wrong with me? You can hear these ticks. This is actually what's wrong with me. It's just not me.
No. And like I said, for some women, like I have heard a few women say that they just breezed through it. They didn't even get symptoms. And
Yeah.
I say to them, just quietly, don't mention that to any other woman, because she was probably going to want to whack you with her handbag.
Exactly.
But the overarching majority of women, there'll be some sort of symptoms. And like I said, it'll be harder for others. It's really just, it's the luck of the draw, unfortunately. But we do know, and this is a research thing, this isn't just a, my opinion thing, is that the more you take care of yourself, the more you get regular exercise or movement, the more you take care of yourself nutritionally, the more you even stay socially connected, it can be extremely helpful.
Important.
As you're moving into that. And if you have been someone that just hasn't taken great care of yourself, sometimes your symptoms can be worse. But then, like, I know many women that have taken extraordinary great care of themselves, but they know that their mother and their grandmother both went through really hard time, and
Yeah.
they too have got some pretty heavy symptoms and severe symptoms. It's, like I said, it is the luck of the draw, but there are things that you can do to make it better.
Yeah. And even going back, talking about probably from where it's similar ages around your mum's generation, the grandmother's generation, it didn't get talked about. It's not like
No.
the mother would have talked to the daughter about it. Karen said her mum would have, said, "Oh, you'll go through it. It's awful." But it was no, this is what can happen. This is, what's
No.
talked about.
The thing is, they didn't really know
I
themselves.
understand. Yeah.
Nobody was talking about it. It was definitely not in research. I mean, it's
No.
only been in research in the last, couple of 10, 20 years. It's only really been researched.
Yeah.
I mean, women's medical research in general has been pretty
Slow.
darn slow. Nothing
Yeah.
up until the 90s really is when it's really started to kick on,
And
which is extraordinary. As a woman, I find it's been a bit of a disservice. But
it's crazy. And I think I could get the name wrong, but I think even going back to my grandmother's days and that, I think it was Oilan or something like that. It was an oil they were taking for, supposed to help with menopause back in them days. And, there was just one product, and it wasn't talked about.
Definitely not talked about, but definitely not even really understood.
Or what it was, it was hidden. And especially going back to them days, males wouldn't even want to talk about it, or were told to talk about that stuff. It was like men talked about male stuff, females didn't. If you talk to a male in them days, they'll probably be running away.
Exactly. And I mean, it's so interesting. I've really been banging the drum of this topic probably for the last 6 or 7 years. And I do a lot of keynote speaking. And so
Yes.
I've gone out and done keynotes where there's been men in the audience, and I just straight away start talking about menopause and perimenopause, and you can see them going, "Oh my God, she's going there." But I just did one recently. That was probably in the early, like maybe 5 years ago. But I just did one recently at a women's luncheon where there were a lot of men there as well. And I just launched straight into it, the topic. And the guys were just lapping it up. They're like, great. I had a few of them come up to me and say, look, I'm going to buy your book. I'm going to buy your book for not just my wife, but I'm also going to buy it for myself.
Yeah.
Because it talks not just about the whole thing, but it also has a chapter that's dedicated to relationships with your significant partner. And a lot of the Menopause Method online program that I have and the Perimenopause Method online program that I have also has dedicated interviews that I envisaged a woman sitting down and watching it on her laptop with her husband beside her and saying, listen, come and listen to this 5-minute interview with this particular professor on, whatever it might be. I have a sex education. I have a sex professor in there as well. She's got an OAM in psychosexual therapy. And I could see the couples sitting down and watching those interviews and going, oh my God, I can see why our relationship has started to fracture a little bit here. So it's critically important, if we want to future-proof not just our health or our strength or our flexibility or our mobility or our brain cognition, but we also maybe want to future-proof our relationships.
Exactly. That's where one thing me and my wife have always agreed on, as I said, I believe she's more intelligent than me. We push, we push each other in the sense of, don't think you can't do it, do it. If we're going through like every couple does a bad time, well, will show, where we are, who we are we're supposed to be together. We push through this. You tell the truth to each other, how we're feeling. And it's amazing how strong of a couple you can come going through that little period. Then you feel like you're stronger with each other and you know each other even better.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. So there's the joys and the lows of life, but if you can have a little bit of a roadmap and you can have a little bit of an understanding of what's, potentially coming ahead. Nobody's got a crystal ball, but if you've got a little bit of an understanding of what's coming I'm basically talking about perimenopause and menopause, then you can make a little bit of a game plan. And you can kind of set the ground and set the territory and set the environment so that you've got a bit of scaffolding to hold you.
Exactly. Well, one thing I'll say, we're getting close to the end. Hope, like I said, hope it hasn't been too long. One thing I'll say about people's bodies, about fitness or noticing signs, heart attacks, menopause, I always have said to my clients, as soon as there's a, red light on your car saying, there's something wrong with your engine, we always pull in, or you're calling the mechanic, driving home thinking, oh God, what's wrong with the car? But there can be little signs, like you said, the starts of menopause coming on, heart attacks. And us as humans, we don't understand. We only get one body. You can have 100 cars, but we get little signs as a body and we don't take notice. But one sign in the car, light coming on, something telling us the air's down, we're pulling into a garage at that moment.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I guess, for me personally, I lived in my 20s. I lived through my 20s and my 30s, and I was, bulletproof. And I've probably even felt that in my 40s. But I think when you start moving into your later 40s and early 50s, then you do need to roll your sleeves up a little bit and get under the hood and do your tests, get your numbers. In fact, Dr. Norman Swan, one of the things I said, give me one thing that you would say. And he goes, get your numbers, go get your blood tests, ask for specific blood tests if you want, if you think you need more, get your cholesterol, like do your mammograms, all of it. Do a colonoscopy. I just did one recently. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
I had a great sleep.
Yeah.
And you do need to get under the hood, because the sooner you know your numbers or your information, then you can do something with that information.
Or you can save your.
You hear about people that, whether it's some form of cancer or whatever it might be, that if they'd only checked sooner.
Yeah, you can save your life.
Correct.
Amazingly, by just one checkup at the doctors. You can, like I said, save your life.
Yeah, so you do need to do a little bit of work. You can't just keep breezing through life like you might have done in your 20s. Like, things change. Your body is getting a little bit older, even if you have taken care of it. So you do need to roll your sleeves up. Like I say, with the Future Proof program, you need to roll your sleeves up and do some work. You need to get with your GP, and if you don't like your GP, go and get a new one. You need to get that information and gather it. And yes, it's probably going to cost you a little bit of money, and yeah, it's probably going to cost you a little bit of time, but it could also cost you your life.
We're coming close to the end, and hopefully it hasn't been too long for you. As I said, one of the questions I was going to ask you is, like, some people can look at someone when you're in your position, or you're fit, you're this, you're your personal trainer. On the bad days when you were feeling like that, you couldn't get up, you just couldn't move. What kind of plans did you put in your head on that day to help yourself?
Yeah, and I've had days like that. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, exactly. You're human like
have
everyone else.
them. That's
Yeah.
just that's called being human, right?
Exactly.
But certainly when I was going through perimenopause, and I ended up self-diagnosing in the end, because I was researching my program simultaneously. It's a weird story, but my clients on the 12-week body transformation had been asking me to do a menopause program for years and years and years. I'm like, I'm not even there yet. Like, I know, but I started doing it, and I was doing it during that time when I was when I thought I was going a bit nuts.
Yeah.
And it was all during COVID, so I had the time and the bandwidth to do it. And so I self-diagnosed that I actually was perimenopausal. And this was after I'd been to my GP and offered antidepressants. And I was like, oh my God, I'm perimenopausal. This is crazy. But it was during those times when I had some really rough patches where I would be like, could barely get out of bed because I'd been awake all night. And I just was not feeling myself. So I would get my shoes on, get myself up. I had a dog, thank God. He got me up some mornings when I didn't want to get up, and take him for a walk. Best thing you could do. Get a bit of sunlight in your eyes, get a bit of sunlight on your skin, get some vitamin D, and get moving, even if it's just for a walk. And I purposely would not take my phone. I still do that now. I still go on walks with my dog, and I purposely don't take my phone.
Well, that's great.
And just, that was enough. That was one step,
And as a mum, you had a young child where you still had to get up. You're feeling crap. He's not going to understand what mum's going through. No. And you still have to get up, take him through.
I've got to get him to school.
Go through school, do his lunch, still feel loved, help him with his homework.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm one of those ladies that had a child late. I reverse engineered my life. So I did all of my career, and now I'm having it, later on in my life, I've got a small child.
Yeah.
It meant that I'm looking after a child whilst going through perimenopause. But I mean, look, nobody's got the perfect world. Like, there's so many women that I know that are going through perimenopause while they've got teenagers going through puberty. Like, what kind of a household is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got girlfriends that they're married, two women going through perimenopause together in the house. I'm like, Jesus, don't invite me over for dinner. Like, obviously, I don't even want to know what that must feel like. So, you just got to get on with it, haven't you? Yeah. But at the same time, not ignore it. Do something about it.
Yeah.
There's lots and lots of things you can do. I'm a big believer in menopause hormone therapy, but there's a lot of other things you can do outside of that if that's not the path that you choose to go down. There's still, at least 5 levers you can pull on to give yourself support.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. And I think it's great that you explained, as I said, you're human. I think what you just said about, who you are and everyone looking at you as the fitness trainer and everything, just to hear that you're human. You're going through the same thing. You got a young child. You still got up. It's not a perfect world of who you are, or if you got, you might
No,
have money, or you're socially okay with money. You still go through the same feelings, the same pain, the same stresses. And I think sometimes people forget that. They just, they look at it wrong, if that makes sense to you.
of course. I've
Yeah.
still got to get up and work.
Yeah.
I've got people that I have to pay their wage so that they can pay their rent or they can pay their mortgage. Like, it's a lot of responsibility on my shoulders.
Exactly.
Just like anyone else, there's got to get up and go to work.
Yeah. And
But
I think, and like I said, I'm going a bit longer, but that's why I think people don't understand that, you're judged in the media for what you say, what you do. And again, that's not even easier, because, you try to keep your son safe from the media, and, you could go out and be having lunch somewhere, sitting down with a guy talking about business. And then next minute you're on the tabloids saying, Michelle's new, interest or something. So that's, yeah.
I wish, Alan.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's another stress. I think people, well, I don't know what that, but there's another thing in your life that you have to handle as well.
I guess. I mean, the beautiful thing, Alan, about turning 50, although I'm now 55, but the wonderful thing about turning 50, and it's a fact, it really does happen, is that women just don't give a shit anymore. Like, they give, obviously, but they just don't. I've got a woman, the lady that's in my Future Proof program, Kylie Jones, she says, I'm in my no fucks era. And I'm like, girlfriend, I hear you. You just suddenly don't care about what other people think anymore. And it's quite freeing.
Oh, it is. And I would say that's another tick my wife Karen would say. She doesn't care. If she feels like she has to say something, she will. If she doesn't want to do something, she
won't.
Yeah, and that's why I said last couple of questions are really quick. One thing I do at the start, but as I said, that's why I got Jacob here. I forget. I got this thing where I got the top, the middle, or the bottom question, and when they're in the studio, the person reads it out. But I can't read it off a piece of paper, of course, because I can't see, but I have remembered every question. If you had to pick from top, middle, or bottom, which one would you pick?
How do you mean? Like, if you gave
it's just so I've got 3 questions. You just pick 1, 2, or 3, and I'll tell you what the question is and see what you answer.
I'm going to go for the last one.
Okay. The last one is going back to childhood. What's a teacher, a next door neighbor, a friend that you have always remembered, and something they taught you, and something you've never forgotten?
That would have to be my grandmother. Yeah, she's just always been with me. She's, a very special woman for me, and as most people are with their grandparents. And she taught me a lot, but there's one thing that I just sprung into my head was, who can I be? So I don't want you to be that girl, Michelle, that asks what's in it for me. What do I get out of this? Where's my kickback? How do I make this advantage in this situation to my advantage? What do I get out of it? I want you to be the girl that asks, well, who can I be? And the first one is, like, where's my kickback? What do I get out of it? It's like a bit of a microscope. It keeps you really tight and very closed. Whereas the question, who can I be, is like a telescope. It really opens you up. Who can I be to my community? Who can I be to my workplace? Who can I be to my staff or my team? Who can I be to my friends? Who can I be to my family? And, the big one, who can I be for me?
That's incredible. I think that saying could be on your website or on shirts. I think, what an amazing lady to say that. And that works with any child or any person you could tell. It doesn't worry gender or whoever they are. That's one amazing thing your grandmother said to you. The last 2 questions is, hopefully you have enjoyed it, as I keep saying. What one of your friends or someone you know or close to you, who would suit this podcast, and you would say, hey, enjoyed Alan, I have been relaxed with these podcasts, you should go on it?
My friends.
yeah, one of your friends, someone you would know that you think would be good to go on, or someone you know in any kind of industry?
Oh gosh. Um, well, I'm a bit of a nerd.
Yeah.
I like listening to medical research and science.
Mm.
So I would probably choose someone that I'm in, you know, in that world with, particularly if we were to talk about menopause and perimenopause, would be one of my mates, Dr. Kerry Cashel. Like, she's fabulous, or even Dr. Fatima Khan.
Yep.
They're two women that honor and respect in this space, the space of menopausal and perimenopausal women. They'd be probably two that I guess would be top of mind. But like, I guess what I'd be interested in would be anyone that specializes in their field.
Yeah.
Whatever the field is, I'm always interested in listening. And if anyone that has like been what you would deem, whatever you deem success is,
Okay.
successful in their field,
Okay.
I would always be interested in listening to.
Okay, thank you for that. And one of the other things I want to say is, I think I do a bit reading myself, and last thing I finish off, what I thought you wrote really good was the Facebook post about, I think it was your grandfather who was an
Radisson Brook.
yes, that was so well written. I think it was on your Facebook or wherever it was, but I think it was so well written and written, I should say, and it was an amazing story to hear.
Yeah, I'm still doing more research because I only found out, and I just found out because of AI. AI can be used for, wonderful things. It's not all bad. I found out through AI that my grandfather had actually done a recorded interview
Yeah.
for the Australian War Memorial in the 80s. And I didn't know that he'd done that. And my grandfather never, ever spoke to us about the war. If he did, it would be just a very fleeting, nothing really, just never, because he had a tough time, as they all did. But
Exactly.
he was there a long time. Like, he was there from the start, and just they kept patching him up and sending him back.
Yeah.
And so he saw a lot of action in Tobruk, and then he went to Papua New Guinea, which was horrific.
Yeah.
But he did this interview, which I didn't know he'd done.
Okay.
And I thought he never spoke to us about it, and yet here he's done this interview. So I'm now trying through the Australian War Memorial in Canberra to dig this interview up so I can listen to it, and I can let my son listen to his great grandfather's voice. Like, I know I'm going to be a hot mess when I listen to it. Just
Yeah.
hearing his voice again would be extraordinary. But yeah, I mean, I'm really proud of him, and whenever I say he was a rat of Tobruk to anybody that understands the history of World War II, they're like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, the rat of Tobruk," and they're like,
No,
"Because they were known as the rats for a good reason. They dug in."
yeah. No, I wanted to say that was so well written from you, and I really enjoyed hearing it because I have had some ex-military soldiers on already on my podcast
Oh
who've been
yeah,
to Afghanistan and special forces, and I've got another one coming up soon. It's
yeah.
just
Well, we were not a war family, but
yeah,
we had a lot of people that served in our family, and so for me, Anzac Day was a big deal, and it still is. I take my son to Anzac memorials and ceremonies each year. But every year we would go to the Anzac service and we would watch Gramsci march, and he would be out the front because he was commissioned to become an officer in the field. He didn't join as an officer, but he became an officer in the field, and he would always be out the front marching. And it's just great memories, and I want to keep that memory alive for my son.
no, that was amazing. But again, I'm going to make sure that we put all your links and everything up to Future Proof and everything for with our podcasts and links. And again, I can't say thank you anymore for coming on my new little podcast and taking your time. Your manager, if it's manager Joseph, he was so great, and got back to me. And when he said Michelle would come on, it was I felt really thankful that you said yes. And hopefully, again, we can even have you on to talk more about menopause and things like that, because I think, we can do a whole podcast about that.
It's a deep dive.
I think it's great, and I think you'll learn more. I'll even more before next time we talk, and I can't wait to talk to you again. And again, thanks for coming on. And I know Jacob would be pleased. Was pleased you came on today as well.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Jacob. I thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, see you later.
There.
Bye. Bye, Jacob.
Alan Lewis Raw Conversation, where every voice has a story.